Welcome to the AEPSi Demo Free Trial webinar for free trial customers. My name is Lisa Brack and I'm a Product Support Specialist with Brooks Publishing Company. During this webinar, we will walk you through the features within AEPSi. You should have received an email from the system that provided you with your username and instructions to create a password. Once you enter in your password, you'll be able to log into AEPSi. When you first log into AEPSi, you will land on your My AEPSi page. This page will include information that you, the user, will need when using AEPSi. If you are a provider within AEPSi, then you'll see your list of children that are assigned to you. You see here that we see the first 5 children that are assigned to you listed in alphabetical order, and then you can also view all children by selecting the View All link. You also see a calendar section where you can view any calendar events that you have created or that other users have invited you to. We have a What's New section, and this section is information that our providers or Brooks Publishing has provided for you regarding AEPS and or AEPSi. You'll find a Messages section here, and this is a section that the program administrator can use to update the users within AEPSi on things that are upcoming. We go down a little further, we'll see any assessments you have in progress. You can click on the child's name and that will take you to that assessment in progress. And then we have the My Reports section, which provides you easy access to run any child reports, class reports, and program reports. So if you have program administrator and provider rights, then when you log in, you will see the children that you're assigned to. If you're only a program administrator, then you'll only see the What's New section and the Messages section. Okay, so if you're an administrator, you'll do most of your administrative tasks from this admin section here. So this is where you're going to set up your account, add your users, add children, assign children to providers. So this is where you'll do all of your administrative functions. If we look on the page here, we'll see the program profile. This will provide you with information regarding your purchase, the number of licenses you've purchased, the number of children that you have active, the number of children you have archived. And archived means that you have a child in your program who is not being assessed anymore. However, you still need their data in the program so that you can run reports on their data. So you can archive the child, which is a cheaper fee, so you can keep the child in the system while not paying the full price of an active child. So that's what an archived child is. And then, of course, if you delete any children, we keep account of that as well. You also find your renewal date. Also on this page, we'll see the Help section, and then you have the ability to search for various users and children in the system by using the search area here. We can also access the program profile from this link here under the admin button. So again, if we click on that, we'll see a little bit more information for our program. We see the demographic information. We also see here that there is a classroom field. So if you want to add classrooms to your program, this is where you'll do it. You'll go to your program profile and then you'll type in your selections and then add a semicolon, and then you add as many as you'd like. There isn't a limit to this. So you can add any classroom name that you want, and when you add this, it'll appear in the child profile. So when you go to create a child profile or edit an existing child profile, you'll see that there's a classroom field there, and you'll be able to select from that drop-down menu what classroom the child is in, and then once you have that established, you'll be able to run reports by classroom. So if you're looking to run reports by classroom or capturing data by classroom, you'll want to use this classroom field. We also have the custom fields option as well. So as you look at the child profile, if you find that there's information that we don't capture within AEPSi that you would like to capture for your child, then as the administrator, you have the ability to create custom fields. So custom fields, you would select a label. You can place it in whatever order you'd like it to appear among other custom fields. You can decide if this should be a text box, a number, date, or just a simple yes and no field. You can mark it required. Then you can also select the format, whether it's Social Security, phone number, email address, short date, long date, zip code. And then if you'd like to include a drop-down menu for this custom field, you can add different choices for that drop-down menu. And then, of course, you can allow multiple selections from the drop-down menu. So if there is a field that you'd like to capture within each child, and again, we don't offer it within the child profile, then as the administrator, you have the ability to create your own custom field. And again, that can be found by going to the admin section, clicking on program profile, and finding custom fields. And the classrooms field is also available there as well. As an administrator, you have the ability to add additional administrators, and you also have the ability to edit your profile if necessary. So if you have other users that will be doing the same thing you're doing as an administrator, you can add them as an administrator to your AEPSi account or program. There isn't a limit to the number of administrators, so if you have multiple people that should be taking on that role, then you can add them as administrators as well. You'd simply go to Manage Administrators, select Create New Administrator. You enter in the required information, and then once you've entered that in, you can click Save, and then that user will receive an email from the system with their username that you created and a link to create a password. Now, if that administrator is also going to be assessing children, then they're going to need provider access, because the provider is the only role in the program that can actually enter assessment data. So while the administrator can actually add children to the program, they don't actually go into the child's profile. But the provider has the rights to the child profile and to the assessment. So if you have somebody that needs access to the child profile and also access to add assessments to a child profile, then you'll need to give that user provider access. So if you're creating a new user who needs to be the administrator and will also be providing assessments, you want to select the provider role as well and click Save. And that way that user will be created as an administrator with provider rights. Now let's say that you already have a teacher or a provider in your system, and now they need to be an administrator as well. If that's the case, you don't want to create a new role for them, you just want to add that access. So you can select Manage Providers, you can find the provider who needs that administrator access, you can select Administrator, and then when you select Save and that user logs in the next time, they're going to see this admin button. So they'll have that same functionality that you do. You have the ability as an administrator to add children. To add a child, you simply select Create New Child Record, and you'll fill in all the required information. If you're using this for OSEP reporting, you'll want to make sure you select appropriate information for that. For example, one required field, regardless, is the AEPS level. So you'll need to select whether the child is a level 1 or level 2. You'll need to select the developmental status from this drop-down list. We have other information that you can certainly fill in if you'd like. And then here, if your child will be in OSEP reporting, you'll need to make sure it stays yes. By default, that Include an OSEP reporting field will be marked as yes. You'll have to select the funding source for the child. The program entry date you can enter. You can leave the exit date as it is until you know when the child is exiting, since you might not know that right now. And then again, if you use the classroom fields, if you did create those fields, then you'll see there's options here in that drop-down menu for you to select for that child. Now, if you add a child as an administrator, then you're going to have to assign those children to your providers. So the only way the provider has access to a child is if they're assigned to the child. Now, one way to take that task off of the administrator is after you create the provider, you can have the provider actually add the children themselves. So the provider can log in and add the child. And as they add the child, the children will show up in your Manage Children section. Now, let's say that you've added the children already and now you just need to assign the providers to the children. That's very easy to do. You'll go to Manage Providers. You'll find the provider and click Edit. And at the top of the page, you'll see the View Assigned Children button. So if you click on that, you'll see the children that are currently assigned to that provider. And to add additional children, you can select Assign Additional Children. And then you can select the different children that should be assigned to this user. If that user needs to be a lead provider, which means they have the ability to add other providers to that child, so they'll be the lead provider for that child, you can select them as the lead provider just by clicking in that box as well. And then once you've made all your selections, you can select Update List. And then when that provider logs in, they'll see all the children that you've assigned to them from their My Children list. Now we do have a role called the reviewer role, and this is not used a lot in the system. The only function of the reviewer is to actually run reports. So if you have a user who doesn't need to actually do anything with the children or work with the children, they just need to run data at the end of the day, then that person would be a reviewer. Now that person will can see de-identified data. So if you have somebody who just simply needs to look at stats or look at numbers, then you'll want that person to be a reviewer in your program. Now if I scroll down a little bit more, I'll see the broadcast messages section. So as a program administrator, you have the ability to create messages that will appear on everybody's My AEPSi page. And this is a good way to alert your users to things that you need them to be aware of. For instance, let's say that your assessments are coming due, that everybody should have an assessment completed for all of their children within AEPSi. So you could set up a message that says assessments are due by 12/20/2014. You can say the effective date would be today. You can provide an expiration date if you'd like, and then you can enter in a message, please have assessments done. And then whatever information you need to provide, you can provide. And you can select Save. And then if I click on my AEPSi button, I see here that assessments are due. I can click on that, and it's just going to give me the information that I typed in, and click OK. But that's a good way to alert your users to things that you need them to do within the system. Another use for that would be if you have new users, you can tell them to watch the tutorials. We have plenty of tutorials available in our help section or in my toolkit section. So you could direct them to that as well by entering a broadcast message. So again, that's an administrator function. The My Children section. So this section, again, if you're a provider or if you're an administrator who has provider rights, then you will be assigned to particular children. In this My Child or My Children list, you'll see all the children that you're assigned to. You'll see their child ID, and then you'll see their last assessment. So for Molly, it looks like the last assessment that was done is in progress, so that assessment has not yet been completed. We see that 4 of these children have not had an assessment yet, and we see that 2 of these children had an assessment completed already. By clicking on these name links, it'll actually take us to the child's profile, to their summary page, where you can see all of their information. You can see their caregiver team, and you can see any assessments that have been completed for the child, as well as any journal entries, any family reports that the family completed. And then once there are assessments that are finalized, then we'll see the list for child reports. Okay. Now if we actually click on the assessment, it's going to take us directly to that assessment. So let's take a look at the assessment in progress here. So we're taken to the summary page, and we see Molly's information, her level. We can see the different areas of the assessment, and we see that we are testing Molly with all of these areas today. If I look up at the top, I'll be able to see the assessment by area. So when I come into the assessment, there are a few things I can do. I can go ahead and print the assessment right away. So if I want to actually print the assessment to do the assessment with the child, I can come to the summary page and select Print CODRF, which also stands for Child Observation Data Recording Form, which is simply the assessment. If, let's say, I already have the assessment with me and I just want to enter my data, I can simply do that by area. I will put my score in the score column. If I have any notes that I need to add, I can put the scoring, the notes here. We actually have a symbol keys section here, so if you're not sure what to do or what to enter in these areas, you can click on that button here, and that will pull up the scoring, the notes that you can add, and then what these symbols mean. If you are not sure what this means or you need some more interpretation of it, you can simply click the plus sign and it'll give you some information, about this objective, and you can select View Curriculum if you'd like to actually look at the curriculum guide. So it will come up and give you an idea of what you can do. So it's going to explain fine motor, strand A, the goal and the objective, and then it's going to provide you with concurrent goals, daily routines, environmental arrangements, and intervention activities. And this is available for everything we see here. So every item you can click on and have access to that specific area from clicking the View Curriculum button. I will point out that we have this IFSP IEP column. So if you are writing an IFSP or IEP, or if you currently have one for a child, and there are certain ideas or things that you like to do with the child that you find within the assessment, you can mark any of the items for IFSP or IEP. And when you do that and you run a report on the IFSP IEP, all of these items will appear for you. So it'll be easier for you to put that into your plan than having to go through an assessment and circling, or maybe trying to figure out which items you'd like to work on. So there is a report that you can use if you select these items within an assessment. And then once you've entered your information, you can select your Save Test in Progress. It's telling me here that the examiner field is required, which is correct. And then I can move on to other areas and complete them as well. And then once I'm completed, once I've finalized each area, then the assessment itself is finalized. So I can go back to Molly's profile. Again, I see this is still in progress because I didn't finish it. You might notice that there isn't a button here that says Create a New Assessment. You can't create a new assessment until the prior assessment is completed. So just keep that in mind. For instance, if I go to Frank, who doesn't have an assessment completed yet, if I go to his profile, I'll see this Create button. So I can click on that and it'll start a brand new CODRF for me, or a brand new assessment. Now, if your child will be included in OSEP reporting, the first assessment you'll want to mark as near entry, and that will require you to do all areas. The last assessment you do for a child, you'll want to mark as near exit. And let's say you want to assess the child in between the near entry and near exit assessments. For instance, let's say you did a near entry assessment and you found that the child needed some more help in the fine motor area, or maybe the fine motor and gross motor area. So you want to work with the child and then reassess him down the road. So the next time you assess the child, you might not want to assess all areas. So if you just want to assess the fine motor and gross motor, then you can uncheck. Whoop. See here it says OSEP include. If this is an assessment, a near entry or near exit, you have to include all areas. So I need to mark this as no. And then when I do that, that will allow me to uncheck some of the areas. I can click Save. And now I see that my assessment only contains 2 areas. So again, your first assessment, your initial assessment, will be your near entry. Your last assessment will be your near exit. And that's for OSEP reporting. And any assessment in between, you can decide to only assess certain areas if that's all you need to do. And then while you're on the summary page, I did show you how you could look at the curriculum guide by item, within the assessment or within the areas, but you can also look at it right from here. So if you click on the curriculum guide here, this will actually walk you through the entire guide. So you can look at this by area, and then once you're in the area, you can look at all the information here by goal and objective. There's also an item here that shows you how you can navigate the curriculum reference guide. So this is something that may be helpful to you once you get into the system. So this is the actual assessment, the CODRF. We have another assessment or another item that might be helpful to you, the professional. So while we do have the assessment, we also have the ability for the family to complete a report. So this will allow them to provide their input on what they see their child doing at home. Now, this isn't something that we actually incorporate into the assessment. So when they complete this, this isn't going to flow into the assessment, but it is just another way that we can evaluate the child from the family's reporting. If you'd like to provide a family report to the parent, you can select Create New Family Report, and you can simply print this and provide that to the parent. The parent can answer these questions, and then after they answer the questions and they complete this, they'll return it to you, and then you can log into the system, and then you can, by area, type in what the parent typed in. So again, you'll take their paper family report, and then you'll type in what they typed in, and then you'll have this information, within the child's profile for future use. So I showed you what an individual assessment looks like. So, you'll assess each child individually. However, there may be a time or within your organization, it might be something that you can do is to actually put children in group and assess them in groups. And if that's the case, then we have a great time saver for you within AEPSi, and it's called the My Groups or the group assessments. So if we go to My Groups and we select Start a New Group Assessment, we can give this group a name. And then we have to do these groups by level. So we have a few options here. We can do the routine activity, which is level 1. And what this is going to do is it's going to provide us with the assessment tool, but it's going to provide us with activities, routine activities that are normally done at this age. We also have the option to do a center-based activity assessment, and we have one available for level 1 and level 2. So this will provide you with the assessment, but will also provide you with activities that you can do with the group, and they'll print out on the assessment as well. And then lastly, we have the standard assessment. So that assessment that I just showed you, you have the ability to print it out for a group. So what that means is that when I print this assessment out, it's going to look just like the assessment I showed you, but there will be up to 6 columns. So you can have 6 children's name on that one assessment. So if you're assessing them in a group, you don't have to worry about having up to 6 different assessments in a pile. You can have one packet of the assessment with 6 different columns, one for each child. And it's up to a maximum of 6 children on that sheet. So let's go ahead and select center-based activity level 1. Now I'll be able to select any child that has a level 1 assessment, again because we have to do these group assessments by level. I'm going to go ahead and select these 3 and then select Create Group Assessment. And what I can do immediately is I can print this assessment just like I showed you before. And when I print that, I'll see the assessment activities and the, a description about them and what areas they cover. If I scroll down, I'll see the first assessment activity, which is Book About Me. It's going to provide me a description and then the suggested materials and procedures. And then if I scroll down a little bit, I'm going to see the assessment area where I can write down my results. And I'm going to see that I have 3 columns. One for each of these 3 children who I selected for the group activity. So the nice thing is not only am I printing out an assessment, I'm including more than one child, and I've also have activities that are incorporated in this assessment, to help me complete the different activities for the child, or to complete the actual assessment in its entirety. So this won't be in the same order as the normal assessment because this is going to, of course, order it by activity. However, once this is completed in its entirety, then the standard assessment itself will be completed. So I can print this out, I can do the activities with my child or my group of children, and then when I'm ready to enter my information, I can come back into AEPSi, I can select My Groups, I can select this group assessment, and then I can, by activity, I can click on, for instance, Book About Me, and I can enter in their information here. I'll put my name, and then I can start to do what I did before, enter in all of my information for the child. We still have this column, that IFSP IEP column, that you can use to mark that item for, your IEP or IFSP, so that way we can run that report down the road. You can save this in progress just like we saved in progress before. But the nice thing about this is, let's say that the majority of the items you're going to do as a group assessment, but there are some items that you don't want to do as a group assessment because you need to do that one-on-one with the child. Or maybe you've done the group assessment for 2 of these children, but maybe Bob was absent the 3rd day, so you weren't able to complete his assessment. The nice thing about these groups is that as soon as you delete the group, so let's say you've done all you can do as a group. There's still some items you need to work on one-on-one, but as far as the group's concerned, you're done doing those group activities. When you select Delete, the group is deleted. However, the children now have that assessment in progress. So Bob, Peter, and Stan, if you click on their in progress link, you'll see that now he has his own assessment. This is his own assessment. So it started as a group, but when you delete the group, they become individual assessments. If I go to Bob's profile, I will see that he has an assessment. It's still in progress, and I can view this, and then I can complete the assessment. So I can go back and do any of those items that I wasn't able to complete as a group. So if you can use My Groups, it's a great time saver. It does allow you to do, work with multiple children at once and document your findings. And then at the end, you can click delete, break the group up, and then work on those assessments individually if necessary. Now, if you had completed all of the items on the assessment, on the group assessment, then when you delete it, then you'll have 3 completed assessments, and you don't have to do anything else to those assessments. Now, within a child's profile, you have the ability to add events. So let's say you need to remind yourself that you need to, for instance, Frank here, let's say we need to make sure we complete the assessment by a certain time. So I can say by 12/20/2014, by 8 a.m., I need this assessment completed. Assessment needs to be finalized. Now, let's say that I have, Frank, I work with Frank, but there's also 2 other teammates or team members that work with Frank as well. And when they actually work with me, but they complete 2 of the areas of the assessment, and I complete the other areas. So if they're actually assigned to Frank as well, I can put this note. I can select them as well, and then it'll appear on their calendar as well. So when they log in and they click on my calendar, they'll see that this assessment needs to be completed as well. So if they're assigned to Frank, they'll be able to see these items as well. So they'll be able to see those items when they go to his profile, but then if they were invited, they'll also be able to see those events in the My Calendar section. Okay. So let's take a look at my report. So now we've looked at how to add users, add children, add assessments, do group assessments, and now we can take a look at the different reports. So the reports do provide a lot of information about the child, based on the data that you've entered through the assessments. We have 3 different types of reports. We have child reports, we have class reports, and we have program reports. The child reports allow you to write these or run these reports on a single child. So for instance, I'm going to select Timmy McAdams because I know he has a lot of data. So there's a few options here. We can run the score summary report, and it'll allow me to select 1 test period range. So I'm going to select test period 1 to 3. These are the test periods, and a period equals an actual assessment. So Timmy has 3 assessments that have been completed for him. I can select create report, and I'll see on this page that the 3 reports will be listed, test period 1, 2, and 3. I'll see by area the test date, the raw score, the possible raw score, and the percent score. And if I scroll down to the bottom, I'll see the overall score. So I'll see the overall raw score, possible raw score, and percent score. So there's a lot of numbers in this report. And if you're looking to, if you're more visual and you'd like to see that same information, but maybe in a more visual manner, you can run the graph scores report. So this is a better visual representation of that data. I'm going to go ahead and select all these periods just as we did before. And you do have the option to narrow these down where you can just simply look at those percentage of mastered and emerging, which means the child scored a 2 and a 1. Maybe you just want to look at those skills that the child has mastered. So we're going to keep this here right now, and then we'll select create report. And now what we're seeing by area is these graphs. So we can see, we can easily compare test 1 to test 3 and see that the child did improve. However, from 2 to 3, he went down a little bit, so we can take a look at that. But for the most part, we can see that Timmy stayed along the same lines, or he showed improvement over time, at least over these 3 test periods. We also have the child progress record. Now, if you're familiar with AEPS, this might be something that you've used before. So it's telling me I can select at least 1 and up to 2 test periods. So it's going to allow me to compare 2 test periods if I'd like. Now, if you're familiar with AEPS, this is a report that you could use before, but you actually had to color in with, with markers or crayons. So this actually, the system does this for you, and it'll show progress based on the color. So if I scroll down to the bottom, I'll see test 1 is this light purple, test 2 is this brighter purple. So I can look at these shadings to see, if the child made progress, have they met the goal. So this is definitely a good visual representation of the child's progress. And this is a report that the parents like to see. So we find that professionals are providing this report to parents a lot, or showing this to them when they have meetings about their child's progress. Okay, another report we have, another child report, is provider notes. So if you have any notes within the assessment, when you print this, you'll be able to see those notes. The IFSP IEP summary, this is the one that we spoke about before. So if you selected any of the items for IFSP or IEP, then you'll be able to see those items that you selected. And it's going to provide you with the goal and objective, the score, any notes, any comments, and then it'll also provide you with an example to use with your IFSP IEP. So again, this is something that could be useful as you do create your plan for the child. We also have other reports as well, cutoff scores, present level of functioning. These are reports, once you get in the system, you can maybe play around with them and see which ones will be helpful to you, the user. If you do have classrooms, then you can run these reports by classroom. So not the child reports, but the program reports. We have reports called class reports and program reports. So it allows you to run all of these reports by an individual provider, by an individual class, or you can just run it for everything. We're going to just jump to program reports because they're the same exact reports, but it allows to run the data for everyone in the program. So we'll run through a few of these. So the first one is the status of all children. So this is a group snapshot report. This is going to give you information about all the children in your program. So you'll see here the children that were tested in the last 3 months. So we have no children tested in the last 3 months. We have a few children tested in the last 6 months. We have 2 actually. And what we're seeing here is the latest assessment that was done for the child. So we can see that in the last 6 months, these 2 children, these are the last assessments completed for them. And we can see by area the score, the possible score, and then the percentage. We'll also see a list of children tested longer than 6 months ago. And then at the bottom, we'll see children not yet tested. And this is important if you are trying to capture, whether or not children have been tested in your program, especially if they should have already been tested. So this is a good report to run to see the current status. We have a progress of all children report. And this report's going to take the first test for the child and the last test for the child and compare those two. And so you'll see here the number of children that were part of this report and how many skills were gained, which is really good overall information for your program. And then child by child, you'll be able to see the child's information, their first test date, last test date, and then by area you can see the score for the first test, the second test, and what the difference was. Did they improve? Did they fall behind? And then you'll actually be able to see the progress during that time. And this is going to show you the skills that or the items that they mastered, those that are emerging, and those that they need to continue progress on. And then at the bottom we'll see the children that weren't included, and they were not included here because there weren't 2 tests in that date range. The next report that is a good report that you can use for your administrative functions is the assessment status report. This one you can select the AEPS level, and then you can actually see, by level where the child is. And you can see this as a group. For instance, fine motor. You can see, are they doing this? Do they need work on that? Are they progressing, or have they mastered this? And again, this is by goal. And then the child profile list, this is one where you'll be able to see all the children in your program. And it's asking me to select a date. Let me do this program report. Here we go. So the child profile list. So this one will probably be important for your program because it's giving you a snapshot of all the children in your program. It's going to allow you to see the child's name, date of birth, their status, meaning they're archived or active, their gender, the classroom that they're in, their developmental status, their lead provider, the level, whether or not they're included in OSEP reporting, their funding source, their entry and exit date, and then their recent status. So this is a good way to see, if all of the children in your program need to have been assessed by this time, and you're seeing that there's some assessments still in progress and some that are not yet started, this is an easy way for you as an administrator to make sure you follow up with those providers and find out why the assessment is not completed, or you tell them that these assessments need to be completed by a certain date. Now, I mentioned OSEP reports earlier. So we do have OSEP categories reports, and we have the ECO Child Outcome Summary Form Ratings reports. So we'll go through these quickly. We have the entry data only report, and this is the aggregate report for OSEP. We can select view here. So what we're going to see is that for funding source Part C, we have 3 children included in this report, and we have 14 children excluded. Now, they were excluded for various reasons, and we'll go through that in a moment. But you'll see here, the percentage of children who entered at a level comparable to same-aged peers, and the percentage of children who entered at a level below same-aged peers. And then we'll see here, number 1, positive emotional or social emotional skills, acquisitions and use of knowledge and skills, and then the appropriate behaviors to meet needs. So this is the aggregate data, entry data for OSEP. So again, I'll point out that there were 14 children excluded in this Part C report, and there were 24 excluded in this Part B report. So if we go back and we run this report for each child, we'll actually be able to see why those children weren't part of that report. And then we can also see the individual data by child. So here we see for those children that were included, we see the child's name, date of birth, the entry date, and then we can see their raw score, the same age peer benchmark, and then where they were as far as the OSEP category is concerned. Here we see Stan was below, he was below here and below here as well. And if we scroll down, we see here children excluded. So there's 14 children excluded, and this is going to tell us why. So it looks like most of the reason is because they were missing near entry data. And what that probably means is that the child had an assessment done, but that assessment itself wasn't marked for near entry. So that's something that you can go back and change just by editing the child's profile. We do see here that the child was 6, so that was the inappropriate age for the level 2 test. The child's older and cannot be part of that. So again, the nice thing about these OSEP reports is if a child's missing, but they were marked to be in OSEP reporting, you'll be able to see the reason they were missing. And I will show you a document that you can look at later that gives you examples of what that reasoning is. We also have the progress data reports. So what this is going to, we have the entry data, and now we're going to see the progress data. We'll see the aggregate data for that. If we look here, there's no children included in Part C, but we have 4 included in Part B. So we'll be able to see all the criteria here, where the child, how the child did, and in these parentheses, they actually tell you the number of children that make up that percentage. And then again, that was the aggregate data. If we look at that individually, we'll be able to see individually how the child did, and then, of course, why the child was not included. So for these 4 children that were included, we see the child's name, their date of birth, their date of entry, their age at entry, exit date, age at exit, length of service, and then we can see the raw score, the benchmark, and the category. And then again, we're seeing why these children were, excluded. So this one's missing near entry and near exit. So they probably had 2 assessments or more assessments done, but the first one wasn't marked as entry and the first one wasn't marked at exit. So the system can't take a look at those assessments and make a comparison because they're not sure which was the first and which one was the last. This one says less than 6 months. So if a child's been in your program less than 6 months, then, they can't be included. We also have these ECO Child Outcomes reports. We have the entry data only. We can select view and see here. If I scroll down first, you can see the COSEF ratings here. So 1 is not yet, and then 7 means completely. And in the middle, we have emerging and somewhat. So we can keep that in mind as we look at this. So we can see the child's name, date of birth, entry, age at entry, and then positive social emotional skills, where they stand, acquisition and use of knowledge and skills, and then appropriate behaviors to meet needs, so where they stand here. Again, this is the entry data only. We see our excluded kids again. And then if I select the next one, the progress data, and I'll scroll down here to Part B. So we actually see here whether or not the child made progress. We find out where they were at entry and at exit, and then yes for progress, no for no progress. So again, these are our OSEP reports. Now I want to point out there's only one more thing to show you. So if there are questions while you're on a page within AEPSi, you can always click on this question mark. They're available on every page, and when you click on that, it's going to take you directly to the manual where that information is provided. if I go to, and again, the help section, you can click on that as well. If you're new or if you have new users coming into AEPSi, you can have them click on the help tutorials. This getting started tutorial is great for any user. It'll walk them through the system, give them an idea of what they can do in here. We also have an assessments tutorial, reporting tutorial, OSEP tutorial, and then we have an opt-out of test areas. So again, if you only want to assess certain areas, that tutorial will explain that to you. In our My Toolkit section, we have some documents and downloads. And if I scroll down to the bottom, I see the OSEP Quick Reference Guide. And what this is, I showed you those exclusion categories on those reports, and some said missing near entry data. If you're not sure what they mean, you can go to this guide, and it tells you what it means, and it tells you how you can fix it. So for instance, the child just wasn't marked, the assessment wasn't marked for near entry. So you can always go back to that child. You can click on the assessment, and you can make sure you mark it for near entry. Let's see. And then click Save, and then now that child will appear for the near entry once that assessment is finalized. So My Toolkit has information like that and downloads and resources. It also has updates, informational and professional development, and then we also have a discussion board where you and your users can use to communicate with other users within AEPSi. If at any time you need to change anything for your profile, you can click on the My Profile button and do that there. And again, our help section, with your subscription, you get free technical support. That's telephone technical support and email tech support. It's available 24/7, and you do speak to a live person. So that's available for you and for all of your users of AEPSi. That concludes the webinar, and if you have any questions, you can always contact tech support, again from the help section, or you can email implementation@brookspublishing.com. Thank you for attending, and have a great day.